Hi, I'm Elliott Weber, and this is my final project for Kinesiology 401 Sports Sociology, and I'm going to be talking about race and ethnicity. And when I talk about race and ethnicity, I'm going to talk about it in sports and like how it affects sports. But first, I got to define and give a background on race and ethnicity. Race is a population of people who are believed to be naturally or biologically distinct from other populations, such as blacks, whites, Asian, Mexican, Native Americans. We'll talk about that later. And ethnicity is cultural heritage that people use to identify a particular population, not based on biology or genetically determined traits. So it's not like your skin color, or your hair color, or your eye color. It's where you come from and like your history of where you came from. So race is physical, ethnicity is a shared culture. Minority it's kind of like a middle piece, kind of where it's kind of both, but a minority leans more towards ethnicity. It's a social identified population that suffers disadvantages due to systematic discrimination and has a strong sense of social togetherness based on shared experiences and current discrimination, which would seem like Native Americans fall into that category more than likely, or most of the time. Race ideology is when people give specific meaning to skin color and other physical traits, and it's pretty much like that's the definition of race, but this is the idea behind it. Where it started with the Europeans, and they thought what they did as whites was the standard, and they based everything off of that. So they graded everything against their whiteness. And this way of thinking led to them treating the blacks poorly, badly, beating them, and like killing them, and they didn't feel bad about it because over the years it just became socially acceptable, which was wrong, and that's just not right. They came to America when we were in the pro-slavery and we were treating blacks poorly. We had them as our slaves. We didn't believe that they could act in society the way they could, and we didn't give them the chance to, and that's kind of halted a lot of. Well, that's kind of been the reason why there's a lot of racism right now. Problems facing race ideology. Science proves that race is not biologically valid. Like your eye color, your skin color, they're not linked. They're linked to internal differences between people, not your race. Like my eye color, I'm brown eyed. My dad's got brown eyes. My mom has blue eyes. But by the chance of those two, I have brown eyes. And my sister has blue eyes. It's your genetic makeup. That's what you're gonna have. I'm white. My dad is white. My mom is white. Some people, they have a black mom and a white dad, and you get caramel, or you get like the middle color. And so like your skin color, your eye color, it's defined by the makeup of your parents. It's not because I'm white that I have brown eyes. Tiger Woods, and like a major sports figure that is involved in race would be Tiger Woods. He's multiple races. He calls himself Calvinasian, which is Caucasian, Black, Indian, and Asian. And like, if you wouldn't look at him and think he's Asian, you wouldn't look at him and think he's Caucasian, but because of the makeup of his parents, he falls under all those categories. And that's why I think the one drop rule would be very useful here, because if you have a drop of this, you're that. You have that in your body. That's part of your makeup. If you have this blood in this blood from this race in you, you're that part of that race too. And race is pretty much socially constructed. We put them at the bottom because we've seen them as the bottom. We never give them a chance to rise up the social class ladder, but we did, and so that's why they are where they are. And race is pretty much based off of social class. Physical variations, like you can't look at somebody's length of their legs or their arms or their hair color or their eye color or like with the skin to tell what race they are. There's different physical variations of each race. And none of us are born with the way we think for racial ideology. It grows on us as we grow up. We interact with other races, we interact with other people, and that's how we become who we are. Race in sports, people say that blacks are superior in race, and I believe that you can call me racist, but blacks are more athletic, they jump higher, they run faster. It's their biological makeup, though. If you look at the Kenyans, they run more. The Jamaicans, they run more. That's part of who they are. They run long distances. They sprint faster. We're in America. We don't like do that all the time. We use cars. We're a lot lazier than them. So we have a lot different we have a lot of different biological makeup behind it. And so like that's why race doesn't really play a role. Just because that race runs more, does more, that means they're going to be more athletic because their kids are going to be adapted, and then so on and so on. It makes them better athletes as they go along. And blacks look up to athletes just like we look up to political figures. 18-year-olds that are black pick sports figures 98% of the time. And of that 98%, 90% of those people were basketball players. So we see who they look up to just like we look up to political figures such as Abe Lincoln and George Washington. But blacks, they're not just very good athletes. They're also smart, and they're honor students. They don't just excel at sports. Some don't just want to be known for sports. Some want to be known as good doctors, bankers, businessmen, and people in the social world. And they're smart. If we give them the opportunity, they can show that. And it's not just about blacks; it's about Asians as well. They're very smart. They put sports second, whereas we put sports first, and so they focus more on education, and that's making them smarter. Why do you think they have more technology than us? Why do you think most of our stuff is made over there? Because they understand it, they know it, and they do more of that stuff, whereas we put sports second. But there are some sports that blacks don't dominate in, such as hockey, bowling, NASCAR, rodeo, and even golf, even though Tiger Woods is the top. He's pretty much one of the only black players. The reason is those sports require money. You need money to go play. You need money to buy equipment. The equipment isn't supplied for you in schools or as you grow up, as it is for other sports. Hockey, you got to buy your skates. You got to buy all this stuff, and it's expensive, and it costs money. And bowling and rodeo and them, you got to come from a certain background. You got to have the money. I'm not saying that blacks don't have the money. I'm just saying most of them don't have the money at the time to do that and excel at all of that. Rodeo also, you got to kind of come from a certain background to get on a bull and to ride it. You got to grow up around that kind of stuff. You can't just think, oh, I can do it and go do it. It's not going to happen. Trust me. I'm from North Dakota. I can't even do rodeo. You got to have a certain makeup for that. You got to be tough. You got to grown up around that kind of stuff to really adapt and excel at it. And the Native Americans, you don't see them in pro sports or even really college sports for that matter, because they're just kind of coming out into the sports world because they thought playing the Euro-American sports was against their customs and their traditions, and they didn't want to play because they thought it was going to go against their religion and stuff like that. But now, as you see, like from North Dakota, you see more of them playing football, more wrestling, they're already pretty much a lot play basketball, and you see branching out into other sports, which is good. It's showing that they're adapting and getting out more. The bad thing about Native Americans right now is they're in a lot of controversy for using the logos. I find that we're using their logos. We should allow them to choose which ones we can and which ones we can't use. Let the tribe vote, like they did at UND. Even though they turned it down, which kind of disappointed me, it's the right thing to do. Because if they're not being honored by it, we're not honoring them, no matter how much we think we are. Look at Florida State. Their tribe, the Seminole tribe, allows them to use it because they think it is honoring them, and that is cool. But we gotta let the tribe decide, not us. Because if we decide, we don't know what they've been through. We don't know their hardships. We came in and we pushed them out of their land, and now we're trying to use their logos. That's not right. We got to give them the respect that they deserve, and I think that's right by taking away some of the logos as mascots and turning away from that stuff. And then Latin Americans is pretty much the last one. Most of them play baseball. They're not really in basketball or football. This is not how they're made up. But 90 to 95% of the Latin Americans who sign a contract with a Major League Baseball team don't get out of the minors, just because they feel so much pressure. They have to adapt to the American way, like coming into our culture and being that way. They're away from home, and they start to struggle, so they turn to HGH, steroids, to help them, and you can't use them in pro sports, so they get suspended, and it's just not really useful to have them on your team. So then they get released, and that's kind of a mess. But they feel they have to succeed at baseball because that's their way out of their country, the way out of their misfortune. And looking at sports, in the NFL and the NBA, 70 to 85% of the players are black. And how many people watching the game do you think are black? That's probably not that many. 90 to 95% of the season ticket holders are white. We have more season ticket holders because we're wealthier and it costs less. We can absorb the cost that it would cost for us to go to the sporting events and do those fun things, whereas the blacks can't. And we should really lower ticket prices. It's getting a little outrageous. And whites also hold most of the power in the teams. They're the coaches, the owners, the GMs, and all that stuff, because we think of the whites as the smarter people and everything. But one thing that I like, the NFL has the Rooney Rule, which makes you interview a black person. Before you can hire a white person, you must interview one black head for your head coach, which is good. It gives them an opportunity to show them that they can do just as well as the white coaches can. They've played the sports since they've been little, and they grow with the sport, so they know the ins and outs of the sport. So they're very smart at it, and they can teach it like better or just as good as the white people can. So we should give them just as much chance to be a coach as the whites. And that kind of sums up race and ethnicity in this chapter. I hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed the class. I learned a lot over the semester. Thank you, and have a good next semester.